Community Task Force and Focus Group for the City of Wilson. And consideration of resolution approving annual settlement tax collection for Wilson City County Tax Collector for fiscal year 2016-2017. For our agenda session, we have items on the consent agenda. They are consideration of approval of bid preparation for Wigginsville Pumping Station caused by Hurricane Matthew. Consideration of approval of bid for blower controls at Harmony Creek Water Reclamation Facility. Consideration of approval of resolution for a sidewalk bid at Park Street, releasing and earthscapes and construction. I wonder how many bids do we get like that?
Barry, you know how many bids we got on that?
I'm sorry.
How many bids we got on that?
Sidewalk?
The blower.
Sidewalk.
I'm sorry, we got one bid on that. We had six companies come for the bid, pre-bid. We had one company bid on that.
I'm talking Wilson bid on
Sir?
it. Where are they from?
They're not from Wilson, no, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Item 13 is consideration of approval of the S31 project right-of-way entry agreement. Item 14 is consideration of approval of slate of nominations, board, commission, and committee. James, you got to read those?
Yes, sir. Board of Adjustments appointing David Shepard, Planning Design and Review Board appointing Bruce Carroll, Historic Preservation, Robert Ignat, Human Relations Commission, Daniel Benson, Alice Anderson, Santa Fort, Wilson Appearance Commission, Catherine Park Barrett, Wilson EDC, Keith Merrick, Wilson Industrial Air Center, Brett Robertson.
The last one is, I think it's a good one, consideration of approval of Cherry Hotel memorandum of understanding. I mean, we're going to work on it, but we're working hard to get it, right, Rogers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll approve it. Can I hear the motion?
Second.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion for this consideration. Motion with Councilman Logan, second Councilman Eden, that we approve this consumer agenda agreement. All in favor, motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to item 5, which is public hearings, and from 5A, consideration of approval of order for voluntary annexation of 0.688 acres located on Gleeland Avenue, approximately 450 feet southwest of Nash Street, north, west of very second insertion, and half of Canterbury Sharp. This is a public hearing. Is anyone else like this particular situation? Can you come forward and take your name and address? Chair will entertain a motion. Motion by Councilman Coleman, second Councilman Eden, that this be approved. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Next, item 5B is consideration of approval of order for voluntary annexation of 0.05 acres, which is 2,309 square feet, located approximately 350 feet north of Harriet Avenue, west of Barton Engineering Survey, on behalf of James and Kathleen Boyd. Is there anyone in council that against this similar situation? Okay, Chairman, entertain a motion. Second, motion made by Councilman Williams. Lyle, second by Councilman Priest. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Item 5C is consideration of approval of resolution for sale of property at 2202 Charleston Street for economic development purposes. Anyone like this, council, about this particular item? No? Okay. Motion Council Cole, second Council. Yeah. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. All opposed? Item 5D is consideration of approval of order submitting new light development regarding standards for internet sweepstakes facilities change to the maximum parking province and incentive. This is a public hearing also. Does anyone else like this council about this particular item?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just for clarity, is this in regard to the terminal change, or is this to all the parking and everything associated therewith?
I think some.
There's three, there's three text changes packaged together. One is the separation requirements we've talked about for internet sweepstakes. Second is the change in the parking ratio for internet sweepstakes. A third is that we've had some issues with the maximum parking standard for all uses across the city, so we've adjusted that, and in cooperation with our engineering community, there's adjustments to that within a text amendment for the UDO.
But we're taking them all at the same time.
Yeah.
Sure, I do. In regard to the, if I may, my name's Will Ferris. I'm an attorney at Wilson, in Wilson, Will County at Ferris, right around the corner. And the first thing is I would like to say that you hit it right on the head. Most of the things that staff brings to you that y'all pass because they're good ideas. And I certainly don't want to think that some of these changes are not good ideas. But the planning board sent up recommendations to you and the city council of what changes should be made, and they heard testimony at their hearing, and they weighed everything, and they sent up saying there should be no change in terms of the separation and in terms of the parking. If I may just touch on the first thing is the separation, 250 feet, 500 feet, and 1,000 feet. If I may start with the first thing is we're looking at inclusivity and not exclusivity. In all fairness to economic development and Jennifer, who actually I'm on the board and chairman, I want to be very clear that I do not want anyone to think in this room or TV or anywhere that I would ever be anything but for business coming to Wilson. That's why I stand up here on behalf of one particular business that has 25 employees. 25 employees. Now we sit in economic development, and often I hear that we have a shortage of jobs that people can fill, or people that can fill those jobs, etc. But we have a business that's actually employing 25 people. That's one of those businesses. In terms of the 250, 500, 1,000, if city staff, which with all honesty, right out of the gate, they said, we didn't know this until the planning board meeting that night. City staff stood up and said, we think that it should be 1,000-foot separation between these businesses. A little bit surprised about the 1,000 feet, because in effect what it does is the businesses that are in operation right now that came through the Board of Adjustment, that did everything that every business does in Wilson to get the proper permitting, etc., and to be allowed to be opened as a business. What happens is if that passes and it's retroactive to the businesses that sit here today, then what it does is it closes down almost all of it. And including putting 25 people, 4 of which are sitting in the audience right now, out of a job. Now, our suggestion was keep the two. What is the end game? What are we trying to do? And that was one of the questions that was asked by the chair of the planning board. What is the end game of this? What is the end game? Why are we doing this? Is it because of traffic? If it's because of traffic, have we done a traffic study? I stood at the Board of Adjustment meeting during one of these permitting processes. And Slade Rand sat over there and he said, has there been a traffic study? Is there a problem with traffic? Where's the problem with traffic? Is it on one side of the heavy industrial, or is it on the other side? Is there a problem with parking on the streets, which is something that we've heard from business? And I think by all means, they should not be parking on the street. I tell you, we have 62 parking spaces at the one that I'm associated with and represent. That building never has a full parking lot. Twice in its existence has had a full parking lot. Twice. Never had a complaint about parking on the street. Twice in existence has been full. Twice in existence was on a Saturday evening. And it's been operating for over 2 years. So it's not during business operating hours. So in fairness, when we talk about saying let's not exclude business, let's include business, there was a decision by the city to place these particular businesses in the heavy industrial area. And the reason that is because, as you know, you didn't want it across the street from your home. And I understand that. But when we're placed in that particular area, we try to become good stewards. One of the ways we do that is we have buildings that were not being occupied. Empty buildings that need work. and they're putting money into those buildings, and whether they're there in 5 years or whether they're there in 1 month, the fact that they're putting $150,000, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 into a building to make it so that it can be used in the future for commercial companies is fantastic. We should not turn away from that. I certainly agree that we should not have all these buildings full of each of these companies. But at the same time, if you come up here and make that argument, you got to make the argument that we don't need to have the same company occupying every single building in Wilson either, because we have all our eggs in one basket. And that's not what we want. Now, in terms of the concern that I have about the 250, 500,000 feet, the planning board, after reviewing from city staff, said, no, we don't think that's a good idea. So we stand by it. We also would point out, the company I represent, this would in effect be ex post facto. We've also applied, we have an application in, we have 2 buildings. Since we occupied those 2 buildings, one we lease, the other one we were leasing. We've actually bought the other building. We're actually intending to fix that building up, which is right beside it. We put in $40,000 into a parking area 2 years ago. We've put in excess of $100,000 to buy a building right next to it. And in effect, with a 1,000-foot rule passed by the city council would close the business, and they'd say, shutter your doors, fire 25 people, and find something else to do. That's just this one business. I don't know if there's anybody else here for that. Additionally, and I'm trying to be a little bit quicker, the second point is the parking situation. The parking situation, as I said, from our particular area, we have 62 spaces. We have enough spaces that clearly we never have run over. Twice we've been full. Now, if there's somebody in the audience, if city staff has gone out there and seen otherwise, that'd be great for them to come up and say. But at the planning board meeting, I asked, when has somebody been out there to say that there's a problem? By all means, if you're at a business, if you're at Merck in the Wilson Corporate Park, and there becomes a huge traffic issue, what's the first thing that you do? The first thing you do is you pick up the phone and call and say, y'all need to be enforcing this traffic problem. And I'm not trying to put more work on any of the social people, the police, the fire, or anybody associated with that. But by all means, if there's a problem with somebody parking on the side of the road and they shouldn't be doing it, then stop it. Don't pass something because it's based on one person or a group of people saying, oh, there's a parking problem, when there's nothing to show that. Now, in terms of the parking situation, our suggestion from our particular area, if you want to make these decisions, look at the end game. If you do decide to do a 250, 500, 1,000 feet separation, and you decide to do something in terms of parking, by all means, don't put the people out of business that are there grandfather me. By all means. Secondly, make the effective date at a later date, because any applications that are in, they should have a fair shot because they've got their applications in. Make it October 31st. Third, as I said, in 2014, we spent $40,000 to comply with what the city wanted us to do. And that was one parking space per terminal. One parking space per terminal. The reason we did that is because we wanted to improve the area. We did all the planning, et cetera, to make it look better. And we'll continue to do that. We've been putting money into a building that we lease, and we're putting money into a building that we own. I'm not exactly sure what the rush is. I've heard one thing. I've heard one argument, and that was by a business owner who I think has a great business, and I do not want to be derogatory about at all. But the argument was, we have a parking problem because I can't turn around one of our bigger pieces of machinery. Well, the fact is that's not our land that we're operating. But the one that it is operating, they're having to go on to somebody else's land to turn around. So to base the decision based on that argument does not make a lot of sense. Secondly, if we're concerned about traffic and we're concerned that it's causing more accidents, by all means come up here and say there's been more accidents. Or talk about the access area. When staff got up and showed the different areas of HI, there's not much HI to choose from. You got Woodard Parkway, you got Woodard Parkway area, You've got the Woodard, area. You've got the, old business, the Wilson Business Park where Merck and everybody is. And then you've got this area at 301. And the question from the planning board was like, if we change this stuff, what is going to happen to these businesses? And the staff said, well, they can just move. There's nowhere to move because they're locked into where they are. It's not viable to move. And so any of these changes would effectively close down the ones there. If the end game is to stop them being open, then grandfather the ones in and stop it. Do it. But if the end game is if we're reacting to just a couple complaints, then this might not be the most effective means to make that happen. We certainly can do things like put up signs and say, don't park here. I don't know that there is signs there. We certainly could do things of, hey, let's just ride through there and there. If there is a problem, let's find out who's got the problem and let's go into the business and say, we're going to fine you. We're going to actually make sure that you're following the direction of what we say the city says you should be doing. I haven't seen that. So maybe enforcement would be one of the issues that we should accomplish as well. Now, the existing sweepstakes that we're talking about is 6643 and 6631. It's two buildings. We've actually purchased one of the buildings. It's the old, you remember the old Farm Bureau building out on 301? That one sat vacant for quite some time. Sat vacant, sat vacant, sat vacant, sat vacant. We leased it. We put a satellite park in there, spent $40,000 when we were leasing it, and then we purchased the building. So if you ride out there now, you see a parking area back there that has all kinds of work that's done in the back of it. Then we're leasing the building next to that. Secondly, there's always, as I've said before, there is an issue where there is new software where there's one game for 8 players. And that's what I was asking Roger. I think that's one of the things that was talked about is making a modification because there's software where you have two computers in front of you and one person's playing, which is strange. There's software now where there's a table where 8 people can play. And it's hard to enforce that side of it when there's 8 people. And I think that, yeah. And so that was one of the modifications we certainly don't have a problem with and think that that should happen. I mean, if there's 8 people sitting around there should be 8 spots required. In terms of the 1 to 1.25, we don't see the parking problem. If there was a parking problem, we just don't see it. And so we ask that you would not pass any of the 255 or the 500,000. We ask that you follow the lead of the planning board that said don't modify it. The city staff brought a bunch of different areas that you could change it. They took it to the planning board, and the planning board sent it up to you, the city council. And I want to be very clear, at no point do I ever want it to affect the economic development or any business in Wilson. And so if there's a way, we don't even affect that particular person that was complaining. We don't even have an effect on that particular person. But if there's a way that we could fix it, I can tell you that one of the people that's involved with the business would go out there and do it on his own, and do it on his own dime. Because he is a business owner himself. He's operated a warehouse, he's operated textiles his whole life. And so he's not in the business of putting people out of business. He's in the business of putting people in business and putting employees at work. Thank you very much, and thank you for consideration.